Apollo Mukasa, who comes from the Ugandan National Action on Physical Disability and which is another grantee organization of the Disability Rights Fund. Ugandan National Action on Physical Disability has done some really critical legislative work in an environment which is not very easy to make legislative change in Uganda. So attention to Apollo. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm privileged to be here in Ireland for my first time. I came in a bit late. I think some of you knew I was supposed to make a presentation in the morning hours, but due to some unavoidable circumstances about the flight delays, I wasn't able to make it in time, but all the same, I'm here. I'm glad to see you all. My name is Mukasa Apollo. I'm going to take you briefly what the organization I'm leading has done for the past couple of years. I work with the Uganda National Action on Physical Disability. In brief, we call it UNAPID, and as just by its abbreviation, it's an organization of persons with physical disabilities, which has been here in Uganda for a couple of years, began in 1998, and so far it has a membership whom we call registered members, over around 4,000 members who are registered with us. Our mission, which drives us, is to see a society where people with physical disabilities are accorded the rights enjoyed by everyone. That's our mission, that's our vision. We want to see that in Uganda, we want to see that globally. And our mission is basically to remove barriers in society that prevent people with physical disabilities from enjoying their rights like any other person around. So our fight is to remove those barriers which prevent any disabled person in Uganda from enjoying their full rights like any other person around in the country. UNAPID, in brief, we have a number of programs we do in our human rights advocacy, but I won't go through all the programs we do. I'll basically focus on a key program which you do a lot, which I've done for the last couple of years. That is advocacy for physical accessibility. Why UNAPID chose this program? Basically, one of the reasons is people with physical disabilities. One of the major challenges we face, which limits our participation, our enjoyment, our independent living, our safety, is because the environment we work within is very inaccessible. It's because we work in a very inaccessible environment. We believe that if you have a very accessible environment, then Apollo with my crutches, my brother in a wheelchair, can easily do anything like anybody else can do. Because of the inaccessible environment, we're limited to participate fully in life, to be independent, to work with safety, and all that. So UNAPID chose that component of physical accessibility as one of the key advocacy areas to focus on in our human rights advocacy in the country. I just want to take you through, I know most of you may know, but for those who don't know, what do we mean by a context of physical accessibility? What do we mean by this term physical accessibility? By simply asking what is physical accessibility. We abbreviate in just 4 simple terms, briefly. 1 is the ability of a person to reach a place and maneuver within it. If my brother Frederick is able to be here in this place, that means this hall could be accessible. He's able to move within here independently by himself. But if you tell Derek to move up there, I don't think Derek can go there. Like my sister will sit up there. He can't go there. That means that he cannot move free within this place independently. 2, use of a service. Access goes to mere reaching a place, but also use a service. I'm here on a microphone speaking to you because the place I'm in here is accessible, that I'm able to come here and present to you. But if this microphone was up there at the top of this building, or up there where my brother and sister stood up there, that means I couldn't be there because of the steps besides the hall. But I'm here using a microphone to be able to talk to you because this place here I'm talking to is accessible, and I'm using a service. Receive and use information is part of accessibility. Participate fully in activity of daily life is part of accessibility. Those are 4 different concepts you will use when you advocate for physical accessibility in Uganda, which generalizes the term physical accessibility in line with human rights advocacy. When I'm presenting, sometimes when I talk about issues which affect people with disabilities, some of them believe by seeing. They don't believe unless something you are into it or you have seen somebody going through it. If you look at the picture, for those who can see, look at the picture I'm showing on the screen there. You can see two people in a wheelchair. Those are tricycles we use in Uganda in the very right terrain. We rarely use these modern wheelchairs like which are normally in our developed countries, but the tricycles are those wheelchairs with 3 tires, very strong ones, which can reach every terrain. But look at the picture there. A lady and a gentleman, they're trying to access a primary school, but they can only be there because of a very inaccessible environment. Look at the gentleman. He's trying to access a facility, could be a hotel, could be an office, could be a toilet, could be a latrine, but look at the way he's being dragged to enter a place. Is that independent living? Is that being there with safety? Is that promoting dignity of a person when you're pulled like an animal into a facility? That's what you're trying to fight for in the country Uganda. Trying to prevent those kind of violations of human rights by pulling someone, although you're helping me, putting me to somewhere, but instead, you're really violating my right. You're degrading me. My dignity is gone. My respect is gone. And my safety is taken away. Look at that lady in a wheelchair. She's being dragged in the pretext of helping. She's being helped actually in a wheelchair to access a facility, to access a building. But in lifting her in a wheelchair, what can happen in that situation? If I tell one of those 2 gentlemen, one of them falls over, you can get a kind of disability, one or the other. So you can look at those 3 pictures and really put yourself in those pictures and see, if I'm the person in that picture, I'm the one, how will I feel? If I'm dragged, if I'm lifted, if I'm put anywhere, in the pretense of helping me to be somewhere. That's what we try to fight for, to prevent those barriers, what we call barriers in society, to prevent those people from accessing services, prevent them from independent living, and promote their safety and dignity in life. Look at that lady, beautiful lady, going to an office in a meeting session, but she can't climb the steps. She's being called like a baby. And she's a very dignified woman in the country because she cannot access those places, office buildings, which are full of steps. She's being called in hands of people because she can't be there independently. Despite what you have seen in the picture, those who can see, we go to the legal framework. What is in place in the country Uganda? I would say that I think Uganda is one of the countries in Africa which I think is one of the countries that have the most disability-friendly laws. We have a number of laws that have been developed by the Parliament of Uganda, which talk about nice things about disability, human rights, a lot. The Parliament is good at passing laws in the country, developing policies, put them somewhere, that those policies must be sensitive to the rights and needs of persons with disabilities. And in addition to the national policies and legal framework, Uganda went ahead in 2008 to ratify the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. And it's optional protocol, actually. So the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities is equally protocol in the country Uganda. But despite all those good legal frameworks we have in the country, the notion still stands that to what extent are these laws implemented? To what extent are they put into practice? To what extent are they real? To what extent are they benefiting the people with disabilities in the country? Because of that, despite the existence of legal framework, UNAPID, the organization I'm working for, decided to come up outstandingly to say, no, enough is enough. Let's embark on advocacy efforts of advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities in line with Article 9 of the UN CDLP. Article 9, for those who, I think all of us will know it, it's an article on physical accessibility. We began that campaign based on Article 9, and the campaign began in around 2008, 2009, 2010, where UNAPID, with myself being part of the team, we developed what we call the first ever accessibility standards. Standards is a document. They are guidelines which guide constructors. If you are constructing an accessible facility, constructing a toilet, a latrine, a hall like this one. How do you make it user-friendly to a disabled person? How do you make it user-friendly to everyone, including a disabled person? UNAP is the first organization, could be even in East Africa, even in Africa, to develop this document. I have a copy here, the first ever. I think could be the first ever in Africa, being developed in the local context. So developed in 2008, 2009, and the government of Uganda launched in 2010 as the guidelines, as a national document which must guide constructors when they're constructing a facility for disabled person, must follow this, must follow the standards. In 2011, we realized the need to launch, to establish what we call a national task force, which will monitor the implementation of these standards. So we launched a national task force we call the National Accessibility Audit Team, which is composed of professionals, both from the social work to disability rights advocates, who are responsible for monitoring the construction of the ongoing facilities to ensure that to what extent are they accessible to persons with disabilities. And I'm the speaker, I'm the chairperson of that committee. I think the picture you can see there, to show you the work they do. They do audits of a facility to ensure that, or to assess it, whether it's aligned with accessibility needs of persons with disabilities. That's what we call accessibility auditing. In 2012, the standards which I talk about here were duplicated in other countries of Africa. Countries like Ghana, I think they've even reached Kenya, and I think even Zimbabwe. Some few countries have begun to borrow the idea from UNAPID, or from Uganda, develop similar standards for guiding the construction of accessible facilities for persons with disabilities in Africa. In 2014, these standards, they won an award by UN Committee of Experts as among the 65 most innovative policies in the world in promotion of accessibility environment persons with disabilities. Having done all that, within almost the same time when we were developing these standards, my government of Uganda was also by then in the process of developing what we call the Building Control Bill. The Building Control Bill by then was the law the government was developing, which was mandated to regulate the construction industry in the country of Uganda. By mean, I mean that it was supposed to guide, to regulate, to monitor, to supervise, and to mandate everyone in the construction industry that when you're constructing a facility, a building, a road, what guidelines, what standards must it fit to ensure that it protects, it respects, it serves everyone in the country. And those everyone in the country, it includes persons with disabilities as well, because they're part of the society. So between 2008 and 2029, the government was developing that bill by then. In the same period, as I mentioned, we are developing these standards as UNAPID. So these two documents came aligned almost at the same time. And UNAPID, where I work for, took advantage of the same period to see how can this building control bill by then, which would be developed, how can it be developed and passed by the government of Uganda when it's compliant with the accessibility needs of persons with disabilities. We employed a number of strategies. What strategies did UNAPID take to ensure that the indicators of accessibility are part of this bill, which was then a bill? One, we engaged the Minister of Works, which was developing the bill, through meetings and trainings to understand the context of accessibility and its need. Two, we lobbied the same ministry, Minister of Works and Transport, which was developing the bill, to include UNAPID on that technical team developing the building control bill. Three, we engaged the media to send out messages on the meaning and benefit of making a place accessible to everyone, including persons with disabilities. Next, we held professional development courses through all the architects, which are combined through the Uganda Society of Architects, to train them, to sensitize them, to appreciate to a constructing facility. you must ensure it's in line with the needs of persons with disabilities. We engage the MPs of Uganda, including those representing persons with disabilities in the Parliament of Uganda, to make them understand that it's the right of a disabled person to access a facility like anybody else. When they're passing laws, are the laws disability compliant? And lastly, we formed a coalition comprised of DPOs and other civil society organizations, which all came together with us to send out messages that respect the rights of persons with disabilities in line with accessibility. Finally, what was the end by then? In February 2013, the Building Control Bill was passed into an act by the Parliament and signed by the President of Uganda in October 2013. And when it was signed by the President, the Building Control Act had adopted the standards as one of the reference documents to be referred to when they're constructing any facility in the country, Uganda. What next as UNAPID ahead of us? One, when the act was passed, the next action to be taken was the Minister of Works was responsible to develop the regulations for the act. So UNAPID will combine the Minister of Works, join the team to be part of them in developing regulations which are supposed to operationalize the Building Control Act. We are part of that process. The process is still ongoing. So we are still lobbying the Minister of Works to officially enforce the Building Control Act. It's not yet official. It's not yet in force. It's still on the standstill, but we are now forcing the Minister of Works to put the act into force. And lastly, formation of the coalition for different stakeholders to joint advocate for accessibility environment. I think, and last one, continue advocacy for development partners to fund the advocacy work for accessibility in the country of Uganda. I will stop there because of the time, and the presentation is available. We can look at it in the future times as well. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you, Apollo. You can sit down and take the questions or stand, however you want.
I can stand.
Okay. Okay, starting on questions, we have one right up here and two. The man in red. Sorry.
I like that, the man in red. Okay. Oh, first off, Apollo, congratulations on all your accomplishments.
Thank you.
Of UNAPD. Here's a question, though. Your organization, as I understand it, okay, so you're dealing with accessibility issues for people with physical disabilities. In Uganda, are there similar kinds of organizations that deal with issues concerning other kinds of disabilities, psychiatric disabilities, developmental disabilities, people with substance abuse? And if there are, could you just kind of comment about that? If it's not, is there any kind of intention to kind of coalesce with these other groups for more kind of a global unified approach?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we have other organizations in Uganda for other disabilities, for the blind, the deaf, deaf-blind, mental retardations, a number of them. And when you do advocacy in the country, don't do it alone. We do it combined together because our changes are the same. Much as UNAPID could lead this process, when you're doing advocacy, even for accessibility in Uganda, we combine with others because in teamwork, you can succeed more than working as a single individual. So we do combine advocacy, but they do exist, other disabilities.
There was a question here.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You briefly mentioned members of parliament representing persons with disabilities.
Yeah.
And would you mind describing a bit those reserved elected seats for representatives of persons with disabilities? Like, how are they elected? Do they have a special mandate, or who can stand for election? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Uganda, as per the Constitution, or as per the Parliamentary Act, we are represented by 5 members of Parliament. 5. 4 per region, that is North, East, West, and Central, and then 1 representative for women with disabilities. and they're elected by the electoral colleges. They're only elected by people with physical, well, non-physical, by people with disabilities alone. So people with disabilities, we combine together and elect those members of parliament, the 5 of them. So they're not elected by everyone, they're elected by the electoral college of people with disabilities. And yes, have I answered your question? Yes, because they represent the interests of people with disabilities, although they sit in the General Parliamentary Forum, their mandate there is to represent issues of personal disabilities in the parliament. So when we do advocacy, for us in the disability movement in Uganda, those are our driving force in parliament, because we begin from them to take our issues to the General Parliamentary Forum. So their mandate there is to put the issues of people with disabilities on the front line desk of parliament for discussion or for debate.
Thank you. Any further questions for Paulo?
Yes, there's Frederick here.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm one of the person who has been able to have your accessibility standards really nice, and really in Tanzania we're looking forward to work on the same lines on that.
Thank you.
But my question is, okay, follow-up to the question was asked by my colleague, that have you been able to really work with the other DPOs? And you said yes. I know in Tanzania you have a problem when it comes like you're working on a particular issue that is focusing a particular type of disability, then the support from other DPOs that are working on other type of disabilities somehow it's a challenge.
Sure.
I don't know if you have the same experience in Uganda, because physical accessibility and information accessibility maybe will be more or less aligned with people with physical disability or people with deaf people, or maybe on information with those with visual impairment. I don't know what is your experience on this?
Our experience in Uganda could be similar to what your experience you're giving, is that, for instance, when NAPID were championing the cause for this advocacy work, they look at it as more affecting persons with physical disabilities, because they look at issues of accessibility, they are more to people who are physical. But I think sometimes, because how do you bring out this message? At first it was that way, but after thorough networking and you bring them on board to understand how does accessibility affect a blind person, how does accessibility affect a deaf person vis-a-vis a mentally retarded person, after understanding that connection, then they came back together with us. At first, it looked to be as if it's a UNAPD issue or a person with physical disabilities issue, but how do you explain to a person who's blind or person who's deaf that despite your being deaf, accessibility equally affects you? And it's important to come together as a force to advocate for this. They come together with us. Finally, appreciate and come together with you. Sometimes the challenge we have is people don't understand the context of accessibility. How do you interpret that broadly? It goes beyond Apollo reaching a place, but accessibility goes even beyond, goes even to this building the way you see it here. If I'm visually impaired and I'm this hall, I look at the way the lighting system is structured in this building, this hall. How does the lighting system here affect a visually impaired person? How does the coloring of this building affect a visually impaired person? It goes to that. If I'm visually impaired, if I have a deaf impairment, how does the sounding system of this hall affects that person? So it depends how you contextualize and understand this concept of accessibility. At first, they look at it to be more of accessing a building, the steps, the lift, the whatever, but it goes beyond that. That's why I said those 4 concepts: using a service, maneuver within a building, all that kind of thing. The context, how you generalize it, brings everybody on board. Finally, you join together and become the same person in advocacy work. It depends on how you bring it out. Yeah.
So I can see that you are successful with getting combined work among the different disability groups. to provide accessibility in these services. What happens in your coalition in terms of funding, and is there any competition among the disability groups about receiving funding? Or do they collaborate about everyone, about one group getting money, but the other groups don't get money? How does this work?
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah, I get it. When it comes to funding, it's different. Like any funding, it's competitive. It's competitive. But what's normally done, there are areas whereby I can be UNAPID, and then have an organization maybe for the blind, and we combine together and we compete for, we combine together and we write a joint proposal as two organizations. UNAPID maybe for the physical and then another for the blind. We come to the same table and say, let's write a joint proposal which can bring us together. And we compete for, write the same proposal and forward it to a donor, maybe like DRF. That's one thing. There's also another area whereby your specialty is in that. For instance, UNAPID is known to be the leading organization in this kind of work, of physical accessibility advocacy. So, if you're leading a certain area and you're known for that, fine, if you write a proposal to a partner, a developing partner, of course, very few may compete with you because of your specialty. The work you've done for a long way. You get a point. Very few will write a similar proposal like you've written. But of course, you may be competing for the same donor. So competition is there, you're right, but it depends on how you frame the proposal. Sometimes you come into a coalition and you apply as joint proposals to the same donor. Sometimes you apply as a single organization depending on your area of work. But does not mean that you don't compete. With donor funding, most of the time there's competition, but how smart are you and how good you are in looking for donor funding?
As one of the donors to UNIPED, I just want to follow up that comment by saying that the two largest funding streams that we have are restricted to coalitions of organizations. So there must be 3 or more organizations working together in partnership with a memorandum of understanding outlining the roles of the partners in order to get funding. There's one additional question down here.
With regard to broad interpretation of accessibility, we do litigation work in India. So we had a case wherein the insurance companies were not willing to provide insurance to persons with disabilities because it was their thought that we are more prone to accidents because we are disabled. So therefore, a high premium is to be paid by us, and therefore by the intervention of courts, these high premiums were reduced and they were made at par with other abled incidents. So there is a broad way of understanding. It includes services, not only physical accessibility, but also accessibility to services.
Sure. I think that's a good compliment.
I'd also like to open the floor to any questions for Jenny, and when she gets back, Catalina, if there are questions that remained from the other speakers.
I have a couple of questions. One is for the last presentation. I'm wondering if you have court cases, probably cases that you have won, or if you have a team working on litigation of those issues. And another question probably to Catalina is, I was following YouTube conversation about mental illness or intellectual disability. Like people are saying, for example, probably there is ongoing debate in the United States, which I'm not sure if it is over. There are instances where we think or we reach into a decision that a person is no longer able to give an informed consent. And is that true? I mean, if this is the situation, and how do we go about with the convention. The convention probably assumes that there is no such thing of presumed disability. It ensures informed consent, but on the other hand, there are ongoing debate. There are instances where someone at some time is not able to give informed consent. Thank you very much.
Paulo, do you want to answer the one part of the question? And then, I don't know, John, do you have any comment on the informed consent issue? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, my brother. On the issues of litigation, UNAPID. In Uganda, the disability movement, we have tried that, not as UNAPID alone, but we have another organization in Uganda for persons with disabilities who are basically lawyers. Their mandate is to support people with disabilities in legal cases, legal issues, and that's their mandate. And they have tried to file a public litigation case on issues of accessibility in the courts of law in Uganda. The case took some bit of time. It was judged, but although the judgment was not ordered in favor of us because the judge thought that maybe they could sort it out outside the court. You get a point. Somehow it was not good on our side as for disabilities in the country, although that's the judge took a decision. But what brings that, because sometimes even the judges have not yet understood the context of accessibility and why it's a human rights issue. But the new development so far is that besides the DPOs, in Uganda we have what you call, we have another commission in charge of vulnerable groups called the Equal Opportunities Commission. It was established by the Act of Parliament since 1998. It has come to us in the last couple of months to UNAPID, and they want to combine with us to start filing legal cases on accessibility. The first intervention, they want us to do the auditing of several places in Kampala, the capital of Uganda. We'll gather data, which places are not accessible. Then they will work together with them and file cases to sue those public places which are not accessible. So there's green light where we are going. We are going to start suing people whose place is not accessible. And especially, even when the Building Control Act comes into full force, it will be a very good advocacy tool for our country. Very good advocacy tool for our country. So we are looking forward towards that. We are just counting on our fingers for a time to elapse. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And John, and then Yenny has also a response.
In the United States, the issues that you're talking about, from guardianship issues, supported decision-making, substitute decision-making, informed consent, all of those issues are a matter of state law. And we have 50 states in the United States. Fortunately, we don't have 50 approaches to this. We have about 3 approaches, and they've been radically changing over the past 20 years. The most progressive states are really very close to what the standards are in the CRPD, although we have not ratified the CRPD. The moving force in the United States is the Americans with Disabilities Act and litigation that's moving forward. But it's more been a matter of the disability community working with state legislatures and advancing the cause, and also moving toward limiting guardianship. We have the same history that a lot of your countries did of relying on guardianship, especially for people with intellectual disabilities or people with psychosocial disabilities. We have moved away from that as the default mechanism, but we still have it in about 1/3 of our states. But the safeguards provisions that we were talking about earlier today that are in the CRPD are followed very closely in the United States, because you can't have even a limited guardianship in the United States without it being done by a court that requires periodic review and that requires a number of safeguards, but it is still there, and it is still not at the level that we would expect it to be if anyone who is ratifying the CRPD and following it fully.
Yeah, I'd like to share a little bit about our experience in doing the judicial review to the Constitutional Court. We did have a litigation team led by lawyers from Jakarta Legal Aid Foundation, and also advisory from other legal aid organization. Our experience is that in Indonesia, it is very important to draft your case very carefully and to prepare your witness very carefully as well. For the issue of psychosocial disability, because this is concerning the right to vote for a person with psychosocial disability, we have to have a psychiatrist among our witnesses, even though we do not really like to, because it's a very medical model. But we have to be very pragmatic in the current Indonesian situation, in which the judge wants to hear the explanation from the psychiatrist. What is important is that to choose a psychiatrist who is really into the right to choose for a person with psychosocial disability, which is not many. In Asia, I only have 1 or 2 psychiatrists who have this view, and to make sure that the psychiatrist is following your leads. During the witness testimonies, I noticed that the judges are very, very interested in hearing the cases, and it is really new for them, and they are quite familiar with the issue of disabilities. But for the issue of psychosocial disabilities, it's really something really new to them. So we really have to educate them about this. We now have new Disability Act with a lot of sanction in it. Just passed about a couple of months ago or 3 months ago. Then in the future we really need to exercise the law, and let's see how is it going later.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? One more from Bruce.
I wanted to ask you about something you didn't talk about in detail at all, and maybe you can say a few more words about the practice of shackling. I read an article about this and the work there, and I thought it was very informative. And I don't think many people are aware of this practice in the world. And if you could explain it a little bit to people who have never heard of this concept.
In Indonesia, actually it's not only Indonesia, but in many places in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, Laos, Vietnam, there's this practice of shackling people or physically restrained person with psychosocial disability. I have some pictures here, which is actually physically chained person to a place, something like this. This is in shelter homes, run by private institution where families send person with psychosocial disability to this place. And even, there is several types of shackling. One is by tying the legs to the chain, with chain. And another one, I don't know, there's a picture here, by putting the legs between 2 wooden logs. And there's another practice of putting them inside a cells like this one. Or individual cells like that one. It's very common practice in Indonesia, and even the Office of Social Affairs often send the homeless person with mental illness to such facilities. Yeah, this is all of the horrible stuff you can see here. They've been, when people in shackling, they can be there for a long time, you know. It means that they stay there permanently. They sleep there, eat there, going to the toilet over there, urinating there, defecating there for years, sometimes 15 years and something. And sometimes in the forms of the goat shed, sometimes it is outside of the house. I met a young man, about 19 years old, who are chained to a tree by the paddy field outside without any covering at all, you know. So for 2 years already, he's there. And I asked whether how did he eat, and the villagers say that sometimes they send some food there. So he's chained there, naked, without any clothes, for 2 years, without any covering, without, you know, no roof, no walls. And yeah, I mean, that kind of practices happen. Also, I know a woman who's been put in goat shed for years. Unfortunately, this place is quite far from the house. So during the night, some villagers can come, you know, and and rapes her. When she complained about that, nobody believed until she was pregnant and gave birth to not only one baby but 2 babies, and the babies immediately taken away from her. We are now doing a campaign to stop this practice in Indonesia, but we cannot really accuse the families because there's no support for them at all, no information, no education, and no support, be it financial support, be it social support or medical support whatsoever. It is from my point of view, is the whole government responsibility, and this is the, how do you call it, the neglect by the government is a human rights violation. So we are working with several ministries in Indonesia with the help of GRF, thank you, in trying to stop this program. And there is a campaign started by Ministry of Social Affairs to stop this practice. But we really have to work really hard. We would, because it happened in 2 places. One is in the individual houses of people, villagers, and another one is in institution. So there are 2 approaches with this. If it's within the institution, the solution is a bit straightforward, because we can just say to the Ministry of Social Affairs, look, you're violating the law, you have to stop the practice. But if it's conducted in individual houses, we need to make sure that there's support available for the families.
Thank you, Yenny. We're now at the end of this session, and I really appreciate all the speakers and also all of your engagement. There is next from 4 to 5 small group breakout sessions. As I said in the morning, one of the groups, I think group number 2, has been subdivided into 2 groups, so please check the list to see which small group you're in. And I look forward to smaller conversations about how we take these issues forward all around the world.
Diana, can I add one thing?
Sorry.